The morning sun cast long shadows across the gridiron grill as Kate Miller wiped down the counter for the third time. Her movements were precise and economical, a habit from her military days that 7 years of civilian life hadn't erased. The diner hummed with the comfortable buzz of the breakfast crowd, mostly regulars who knew each other by name. "Order up," called Manny from the kitchen, sliding a plate of steak and eggs onto the pass. Kate grabbed the plate, feeling the familiar warmth through her calloused fingertips. "Thanks, Manny, Mr. Peterson's usual." She moved through the diner with grace that belied her history, delivering the plate to an elderly gentleman in the corner booth. Only the faintest hint of a limp revealed the injury that had ended her military career. That and the subtle scan of the room she performed every few minutes, old habits from special warfare support training that had kept her alive in 3 combat tours. "How's Sophie doing today, Mr. Aishi Stohem?" Peterson asked, his weathered face crinkling with genuine concern. Kate allowed herself a small smile. "Doctor says she might be eligible for a new treatment. Nothing certain yet, but we're hopeful." The hope was expensive, $90,000 of experimental surgery expensive, but Kate kept that detail to herself as she moved back toward the counter. The photograph tucked in her apron pocket seemed to grow heavier with each step. Sophie's 10th birthday, her smile radiant, despite being confined to the wheelchair that had been her reality since the accident. The same accident that had taken David. Jack Harrison emerged from his office at the back of the diner, his imposing figure drawing the eye of every veteran in the place. At 58, the former Navy SEAL moved with the dangerous grace of a much younger man. His silver hair was military short, his posture ramrod straight. Only those who knew him well recognized the slight favoring of his right leg, a souvenir from Fallujah that he never discussed. "Morning crowd looks good," he said, surveying his domain with sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. "Best Tuesday we've had in months," Kate replied, pouring him a cup of the strong black coffee he preferred. Jack's weathered hand reached for the cup, the Rolex Submariner on his wrist catching the morning light. It was his only concession to luxury, a gift from his SEAL team after their final mission together. The watch was a reminder of bonds forged in combat, of men who would die for each other without hesitation. "DeReeves called," Jack said quietly, his voice pitched for Kate alone. "Said he might have a lead on that treatment for Sophie." Kate's hands stilled on the coffee pot. Thomas Reeves was more than just the best neurosurgeon in Red Rock, Arizona. He was Jack's former teammate, a combat medic turned doctor who had saved countless lives on and off the battlefield. "When can we meet him?" she asked, hope and fear warring in her chest. "He's stopping by for lunch." Jack took a sip of his coffee, eyes drifting to the door as though speaking of the doctor had conjured him. Instead of Reeves, a family of 4 entered, the youngest child pointing excitedly at the signed American flag framed on the wall. The Gridiron Grill was famous for its military memorabilia, each piece carrying a story that Jack would share with anyone who asked. The flag had been flown over a forward operating base in Afghanistan, signed by every member of a Ranger platoon that had survived an ambush against impossible odds. Kate showed the family to a table beneath the flag, providing the children with crayons and paper placemats featuring the diner's mascot, a bulldog wearing dog tags. As she handed out menus, the rumble of approaching motorcycles vibrated through the floor. The sound was distinctive and out of place in the quiet morning routine of the Gridiron Grill. Conversation faltered as heads turned toward the large windows facing the parking lot. 3 Harley-Davidsons pulled up, chrome gleaming in the Arizona sun. "Trouble," Jack murmured, moving to stand beside Kate, his coffee forgotten. The lead rider dismounted first, removing his helmet to reveal a shaved head and a face hardened by violence. Ray Sledge Thompson stood 6'4", his muscular frame covered in tattoos that extended up his neck and onto his scalp. The Desert Wolves MC patch on his leather vest was prominently displayed, the snarling wolf head, a symbol feared throughout the Southwest. His companions, Felix Viper Gonzalez and Brock Hammer Daniels, flanked him as they swaggered toward the entrance. The bell above the door chimed, cheerfully incongruous with the sudden tension that filled the room. Sledge surveyed the diner with cold eyes, gaze lingering on the military memorabilia before settling on the reserve booth in the corner. The booth had a small placard reading "Reserved for Veterans" and was currently occupied by 4 elderly men, all wearing caps or pins identifying their military service. Without hesitation, Sledge headed directly for the veterans' booth. "Playtime's over, Grandpa's," he announced loudly. "We need this table." The oldest veteran, wearing a Korean war cap, looked up with dignity. "Son, there are plenty of other tables available." Sledge leaned forward, invading the man's space. "I ain't your son, and I want this table. Now." Kate moved swiftly, positioning herself between Sledge and the veterans. At 5'9" with an athletic build, she was no small woman, but Sledge towered over her. She didn't flinch. "Welcome to the Gridiron Grill," she said pleasantly, steel underlying her customer service voice. "I'd be happy to seat you at one of our other tables. This booth is permanently reserved." Sledge's eyes narrowed as he assessed her, taking in the neat ponytail, the clean apron, the steady gaze that revealed nothing of her thoughts. To him, she was just a waitress, someone to dismiss. "Little lady," he drawled, the words dripping with condescension. "Maybe you didn't hear me. We're sitting here." Jack approached, his movements measured and controlled. "Gentlemen, I'm Jack Harrison, the owner. I'll have to insist you choose another table. This one's not negotiable." Viper and Hammer spread out slightly, creating a triangle formation that any combat veteran would recognize as a tactical position. Jack certainly did, his eyes hardening as he read the threat. "You know who we are?" Sledge asked, his voice dangerously soft. "Desert Wolves," Jack acknowledged. "Doesn't change the rules of my establishment." Sledge's face darkened. "Rules apply to civilians, old man. We make our own." The tension in the diner was palpable now. Families with children were quietly gathering their belongings, preparing for a hasty exit. The veterans in the booth remained dignified but alert, one subtly positioning his cane for easy access. Kate maintained her professional smile. "I'll be happy to serve you at any other table, or you're welcome to try the diner down the street." The dismissal was subtle but clear. A flash of rage crossed Sledge's face, so quick that only those trained to spot micro-expressions would have caught it. "You telling me what to do?" he asked, his voice dropping an octave. "I'm informing you of your options," Kate replied evenly. What happened next seemed to unfold in slow motion, though it took less than 2 seconds. Sledge's arm moved in a blur, his open palm connecting with Kate's cheek with a crack that echoed through the suddenly silent diner. The force of the blow snapped her head to the side, sending her staggering back a step. Jack lunged forward, but Viper and Hammer intercepted him. Each grabbed one of his arms, their grips expert and painfully tight. Jack could have broken free, but doing so would escalate the situation drastically, endangering everyone in the diner. "Stand down, Jack," Viper hissed, his grip tightening on the precise nerve bundle that sent shooting pain up Jack's arm. Kate straightened slowly, touching her fingertips to her split lip. A thin trickle of blood ran down her chin, bright against her pale skin. Something shifted in her eyes, a soldier replacing a waitress. "Please," she said softly, her voice changed deeper. "I have a daughter waiting at home." For a moment it seemed the tension might dissolve. Sledge turned his back dismissively, gesturing to his companions to release Jack. As he moved toward the veterans' table, Kate's hand closed around the back of a heavy oak chair. In one fluid motion born of thousands of hours of training, she lifted the chair and swung it in a perfect arc. It connected with Sledge's back with a satisfying thud, the impact so precisely delivered that the chair remained intact as Sledge crashed forward into the table, sending coffee cups and plates flying. The diner erupted into chaos. Hammer released Jack and charged toward Kate, only to meet Jack's fist with his face. Viper pulled a knife from his boot, the blade glinting in the morning sunlight, streaming through the windows. Kate was already moving her body, remembering skills she hadn't used in 7 years. She pivoted on her good leg, using a serving tray to deflect Viper's first slash before smashing it into his face. The metal tray bent with the impact, but Viper's nose bent more. Sledge was recovering, rising from the wreckage of the veteran's table with murder in his eyes. The elderly Korean War veteran calmly brought his cane down on Sledge's knee with surprising force, eliciting a howl of pain. "Marine Corps 1952, the old man said by way of explanation. The family that had been seated beneath the flag was huddled in the corner, the father shielding his children with his body. Kate caught his eye and nodded toward the kitchen. Understanding immediately, he hustled his family toward the rear exit. Jack was handling Hammer with the efficient brutality of a man who had spent decades in special operations. Each strike was calculated, designed to cause maximum effect with minimum effort. At 58, Jack couldn't afford to waste energy on flashy moves. Sledge shoved the veteran aside and lunged for Kate, his greater weight and strength momentarily giving him the advantage as he grabbed her arm. Kate didn't resist. Instead, she moved with his pull, stepping into his space rather than away. The unexpected movement threw him off balance, allowing her to drive her knee into his groin with precision born of combat training. As Sledge doubled over, Kate grabbed a metal pitcher of ice water and brought it down on the back of his head. The impact wasn't enough to knock him out, but it bought her precious seconds to create distance. The front door of the diner flew open as Thomas Reeves rushed in, his medical bag in hand. At 45, the neurosurgeon retained the powerful physique of his Delta Force days. He assessed the situation instantly, dropping his bag and moving to intercept Viper, who had recovered and was circling toward Kate from the left. "Need a hand?" Reeves asked calmly, as though inquiring about the daily special. "Second one this week," Kate replied, her split lip curling into a smile that contained no humor. Reeves nodded and stepped into Viper's path, assuming a casual stance that any trained fighter would recognize as anything but casual. "Sir, I'm going to suggest you put that knife down and exit the establishment." Viper spat blood onto the diner floor. "Fuck you." "Poor choice," Reeves commented, before moving with the explosive speed that had made him legendary in special operations circles. His first strike targeted Viper's wrist, precisely hitting the radial nerve and causing involuntary finger extension. The knife clattered to the floor. His second strike was a palm heel to the solar plexus that sent Viper staggering back, struggling for breath. Sledge had recovered enough to pull a small canister from his vest pocket. Pepper spray illegal in its concentration. Before he could use it, Kate snatched a bottle of ketchup from a nearby table and squeezed it directly into his face. The thick red condiment blinded him temporarily, giving Kate the opening to deliver a roundhouse kick to his ribs that drove the air from his lungs. Hammer had disengaged from Jack and was backing toward the door, pulling a phone from his pocket. Jack recognized the strategic retreat. Hammer was calling for reinforcements. "Kate!" Jack called sharply, the command in his voice cutting through her combat focus. "Enough, let them go." Kate blinked, the soldier receding as the waitress returned. She stepped back, creating distance between herself and the bikers. Her breaths came in controlled measures, neither panicked nor labored. Sledge wiped ketchup from his eyes with his sleeve, his expression promising retribution. "You have no idea who you just fucked with, bitch." "Actually," Kate said quietly, "I believe I do, Sergeant Thompson." Dishonorable discharge 2015 after the friendly fire incident in Kandahar. Some might call it karma. Sledge froze, genuine shock replacing rage for a split second. "How the fuck?" "Time to go," Reeves interrupted, his voice pleasant, but his stance unmistakably ready for further action. The three bikers backed toward the door, maintaining eye contact like wounded predators, unwilling to show weakness. "This isn't over," Sledge promised, blood and ketchup dripping from his face onto his leather vest. "It never is," Jack replied wearily. The bell chimed again as the bikers exited, the cheerful sound absurdly out of place. Through the windows, they watched the three men mount their motorcycles and roar away, the noise fading into the distance. The diner remained frozen for a moment before erupting into activity. Customers emerged from hiding places, the elderly veterans began righting their table, and Manny peeked out from the kitchen with a cast-iron skillet held ready. Kate surveyed the damage with a professional eye. 3 broken tables, numerous shattered dishes, and food splattered across the floor and walls. The cost would be significant, but not insurmountable. "Always the diplomat," Reeves said to Kate, the corner of his mouth twitching. Kate touched her split lip gingerly. "They hit first." Jack was already on the phone, his voice calm as he reported the incident to local law enforcement. The Gridiron Grill had excellent security cameras, and the footage would clearly show that Kate and Jack had acted in self-defense. As Kate began cleaning up the mess, she noticed several customers recording with their phones. The incident would be online within minutes, spreading across social media like wildfire. She sighed, knowing that anonymity had been one of her most valuable assets since leaving the military. "I'll get the first aid kit," Reeves said, retrieving his medical bag from where he'd dropped it. Jack finished his call and joined them, wincing slightly as he flexed his bruised knuckles. "Sheriff Lawson is on his way. Says to secure the premises, but not to clean up until they've documented everything." "Lawson," Kate repeated, her expression neutral. The local sheriff had always been polite to her, but there was something in his eyes when he looked at Jack that suggested a history between them, not all of it pleasant. The elderly Korean War veteran approached, leaning on his cane. "Young lady, that was some fine fighting. Reminded me of my wife, God rest her soul." She once took down a purse snatcher with nothing but her umbrella and a bad attitude. Kate smiled despite her throbbing lip. Thank you for the assist, sir. Marines look after their own, he replied with a wink, tapping the emblem on his cap before rejoining his companions. Reeves led Kate to a clean booth, setting his medical bag on the table. With professional efficiency, he examined her lip and the reddening mark on her cheek that would soon become a bruise. Nothing broken, he announced after gentle probing. Split lip will heal in a few days. The bruise might last a week. I've had worse paper cuts. Kate dismissed, though she didn't pull away, as Reeves cleaned the wound with an antiseptic wipe. Jack slid into the booth across from them, his expression grave. They'll be back, and not just the three of them. I know, Kate said simply. The Desert Wolves have been expanding their territory, Jack continued. They're not just a motorcycle club. They're muscle for hire, and rumor has it they've been working for someone with deep pockets and political aspirations. Richard Kessler, Reeves supplied, applying a small butterfly bandage to Kate's lip. The name hung in the air between them, weighted with unspoken history. Kate had heard it before, though she couldn't immediately place where or when. Kessler Development, Jack explained, seeing her momentary confusion. They've been buying up property all over Red Rock. Turned down his offer for this place 3 times in the last year. Understanding dawned. So the Desert Wolves show up to cause trouble. You can't operate your business, and suddenly selling seems more attractive. Tale as old as time, Reeves agreed, packing up his medical supplies. Thugs with fancy backers. The bell above the door chimed once more as Sheriff Bill Lawson entered. Tall and lean, with the weathered face of a man who'd spent decades in the Arizona sun, Lawson surveyed the destruction with a practiced eye. His deputy, a young man barely out of the academy, followed with a notebook at the ready. Jack Lawson acknowledged, his tone neutral. Ms. Miller. Kate nodded politely, aware that her appearance, split-lipped, disheveled uniform, and the beginning of an impressive bruise told most of the story. Got 3 angry bikers claiming your waitress assaulted them unprovoked. Lawson said, his expression unreadable. Said they were just looking for a table for breakfast. Security footage will show otherwise, Jack replied evenly. Lawson nodded to his deputy, who headed for the office where the security system was located. I'm sure it will. Desert Wolves have been causing trouble all over the county. Matter of time before they tried here. There was something in his tone, a resignation that suggested more knowledge than he was sharing. Kate studied the sheriff carefully, noting the subtle tells of a man choosing his words with precision. You might want to consider closing for a few days. Lawson continued, addressing Jack, but glancing at Kate. Until things cool down. We'll be open tomorrow as usual, Jack replied firmly. Lawson sighed, removing his hat and running a hand through thinning gray hair. Your call, but I can't post a deputy here around the clock. Department's stretched thin as it is. We can handle ourselves, Kate stated quietly. Lawson's gaze shifted to her, assessing. So I see. Military, Navy, special warfare support. Recognition flickered in the sheriff's eyes. David Miller's widow. Kate stiffened. Few people made the connection, as she had reverted to her maiden name after David's death. Yes. An unspoken communication seemed to pass between Lawson and Jack, brief but loaded with meaning. The sheriff cleared his throat. Well, we'll need statements from everyone, and that footage. The next hour passed in a blur of statements and photographs, customers gradually filtering out until only the staff remained. The elderly veterans insisted on helping with the cleanup, despite Jack's protests that it wasn't necessary. As Kate swept up broken glass, she noticed a sleek black SUV pulling into the parking lot. The vehicle screamed money-new Cadillac Escalade with tinted windows and custom wheels. The man who emerged wore a tailored Armani suit that probably cost more than Kate's monthly rent. His silver hair was expertly styled, his tan perfect, despite the Arizona spring having barely begun. Richard Kessler moved with the confidence of a man accustomed to having doors open for him. Today he opened the diner door himself, stepping carefully over the threshold to avoid the remaining debris from the morning's altercation. Jack, he called, his voice carrying the polished cadence of East Coast private schools, despite 20 years in Arizona. Heard there was some trouble? Jack straightened from where he was writing a table, his expression hardening. News travels fast. Small town, Kessler replied with a practiced smile that didn't reach his eyes. He surveyed the damage with apparent concern. Terrible business, these motorcycle gangs. Sheriff Lawson tells me they've been causing problems all over. Kate continued sweeping, keeping her head down, but her senses alert. Something about Kessler set off warning bells, the same instinct that had saved her life in combat zones. "What can I do for you, Kessler?" Jack asked bluntly. "We're closed for the day." Kessler spread his hands in a gesture of magnanimity. "I came to offer help, of course. Insurance can be so tedious with claims like this. Acts of vandalism, deductibles." He shook his head sympathetically. "My previous offer for the property still stands. In fact, given these unfortunate circumstances, I'd be willing to increase it. Say double market value." Jack's expression didn't change. "The gridiron isn't for sale. Not to you, not to anyone." Kessler's smile remained fixed, but his eyes hardened. "Jack, be reasonable. This location would be perfect for the new development. Jobs for the community, increased tax-based prosperity for everyone." "Everyone except the small businesses you'd bulldoze," Jack countered. Kessler sighed as though dealing with a particularly stubborn child. "Progress requires change. You can't stop it. Might as well profit from it." His gaze swept the diner once more, lingering on the military memorabilia. "This place is a relic, Jack, like the wars it commemorates. Time to move forward." Kate had stopped sweeping, her knuckles white around the broom handle. The casual dismissal of military service and sacrifice made her blood boil, but she maintained her composure. This wasn't her fight. Not yet. Jack stepped closer to Kessler, close enough that the other man had to resist the urge to step back. "I appreciate your concern, but my answer remains the same. The gridiron stays where it is as it is." Kessler adjusted his tie, a tell of discomfort despite his practiced smile. "Well, my offer remains open, though I can't guarantee for how long." He turned to leave, then paused as though remembering something. "Oh, Jack, I meant to ask, how's that memory of yours these days, still having those episodes about Fallujah?" The question was delivered casually, but Kate saw Jack stiffen, a almost imperceptible reaction that most would miss. She'd seen that response before in veterans, when someone probed too close to unhealed wounds. "My memory's just fine," Jack replied, his voice dangerously quiet. Kessler nodded, satisfied that his barb had landed. "Good to hear. I know the Red Night in Fallujah weighs on many men's consciences. Such a tragedy. So many complications." With that parting shot, Kessler exited the diner, climbing back into his luxury SUV and pulling away with deliberate slowness. The silence he left behind was heavy with unasked questions. Kate resumed sweeping, respecting Jack's privacy. Whatever the Red Night in Fallujah referred to, it clearly represented a vulnerability that Kessler was willing to exploit. Reeves emerged from the kitchen, where he'd been helping Manny clean up. His expression suggested he'd overheard at least part of the exchange. That man always did know where to stick the knife. Jack's jaw worked silently for a moment before he responded. "He doesn't scare me." "He should," Reeves said quietly. "He's not the same pencil pusher from the agency. He's got real power now and real ambition." Kate connected the dots. "Sae," Jack nodded grimly. "Former Special Activities Division. Oversaw some of the darker operations during the height of the conflict, the kind that never make the official reports." The implications hung in the air. Kate had encountered enough intelligence operatives during her service to understand the kind of moral flexibility required for such positions. If Kessler had transitioned that skill set to the private sector in politics, he would be a formidable enemy indeed. "We should talk," Jack said, finally meeting Kate's eyes. "About David, about why you really came to work here 3 years ago, and about what Sledge meant when he said this isn't over." Kate felt a chill that had nothing to do with the diner's air conditioning. "My shift ends at 3. Jack checked his Rolex, the watch catching the light. "Meet me at my place at 4. Bring anything David might have left behind about his last deployment. Anything at all." Reeves placed a hand on Kate's shoulder, his expression grave. "And Kate, don't go home alone tonight. The Desert Wolves aren't known for their forgiving nature." Kate thought of Sophie, vulnerable in her wheelchair, waiting at Mrs. Henderson's after school. The retirement community where they lived had minimal security, designed more to keep residents in than intruders out. "I'll pick up Sophie and pack a bag," she decided. "Where should we go?" "My place," Jack said without hesitation. "Guest house in the back is fully accessible, and my security system isn't just for show." As Kate finished cleaning, her mind raced with implications and possibilities. For 7 years, she had believed David died in a tragic accident, a drunk driver crossing the center line on a rainy night. The same accident that left Sophie paralyzed from the waist down. She had grieved, adapted, and rebuilt their lives with stubborn determination. But now, with Sledge's recognition of her Kessler's veiled threats and Jack's cryptic reference to David's last deployment, a terrible suspicion began forming in her mind. The accident that had seemed so random, so senseless, might have been neither. As she hung her apron on the hook in the back room, Kate felt the weight of David's dog tags against her chest, worn beneath her uniform, where customers couldn't see them. She had kept them as a connection to him, a private reminder of the man who had been her world. Now they felt like a premonition, or perhaps a warning. Something had been set in motion the moment she swung that chair into Sledge Thompson's back, but it hadn't started there. It had started 7 years ago in the rain-slicked streets of Red Rock, with the squeal of tires and the sound of tearing metal. The truth had been waiting patiently, and now it was ready to emerge whether Kate was prepared for it or not. 72 hours after the incident at the Gridiron Grill, Kate guided Sophie's wheelchair through the pristine hallways of Red Rock Memorial Hospital. The antiseptic smell brought back unwelcome memories of the weeks after the accident, when she had practically lived in the pediatric intensive care unit praying her daughter would wake up. "Mom, you're squeezing my shoulder," Sophie observed, looking up with eyes that were far too perceptive for a 10-year-old. Kate relaxed her grip immediately. "Sorry, sweetheart, just thinking." "About the fight at the diner?" Sophie asked. "I saw the video. Jimmy Henderson showed me on his tablet." Kate suppressed a sigh. Of course the video had spread. The clip of a waitress taking down 3 bikers with a chair and kitchen implements had gone viral, accumulating millions of views across multiple platforms. The Gridiron Grill's phone hadn't stopped ringing with interview requests from news outlets around the country. "We've talked about this," Kate said gently. What happened at the diner was self-defense, not something to celebrate. Sophie's expression remained serious, her blonde hair falling across her forehead as she nodded. "I know, but you were brave, like Daddy was." The comparison sent a pang through Kate's heart. David had been brave, certainly decorated for valor during his time with Naval Special Warfare. But the revelation that his death might not have been an accident had shaken her to her core. "De Reeves will see you now," the receptionist announced, saving Kate from having to respond. They navigated to Reeves' office, the door opening before Kate could knock. Thomas Reeves greeted them with a warm smile that transformed his otherwise stern features. Unlike many specialists, he crouched down to Sophie's level, speaking directly to her rather than over her head to Kate. "Hey there, Commander Sophie. How's my favorite patient today?" Sophie grinned at the nickname. "Ready for the mission brief, sir?" Their exchange had the comfortable rhythm of a routine established over many visits. Reeves had been Sophie's doctor since they'd moved to Red Rock 3 years ago, his expertise in spinal injuries making him the obvious choice. What Kate hadn't known until recently was his connection to David and Jack, or his background in Delta Force. The office was meticulously organized with framed medical degrees alongside subtler indicators of his military service. A Delta Force Challenge coin displayed in a small case, a photograph of a younger Reeves with a team whose faces were partially obscured by desert gear. "Let's talk about this new procedure," Reeves said once they were settled. He pulled up detailed scans of Sophie's spine on his computer monitor. "The injury to your T12 vertebra has always been our primary concern. Traditional approaches have limited effectiveness because of the complexity of the damage." Sophie listened with the serious concentration of a child who had been forced to understand medical terminology far beyond her years. "But there's a new technique," Reeves continued, "using stem cell therapy combined with the neural interface that's showing remarkable promise in cases like yours." Kate leaned forward. "What kind of promise are we talking about?" Reeves's expression was cautiously optimistic. "In the trial cases, 80% of patients with similar injuries regained some level of mobility. 30% achieved independent walking with minimal assistance." Sophie's eyes widened, hope blooming on her face. "I could walk again. It's possible." Reeves confirmed, his tone measured. "The procedure is still experimental, which means insurance won't cover it. And it's only being performed at 3 hospitals in the country." "And the cost?" Kate asked, already knowing the answer would be beyond her means. Reeves hesitated, glancing at Sophie before responding. "The procedure itself runs about $90,000. With the rehabilitation protocol, we're looking at close to $120,000 total." The number hung in the air, simultaneously enormous and absurdly inadequate. What was any amount of money compared to Sophie's chance to walk again? There is a way, Reeves said, his voice dropping slightly. Kessler Foundation is funding a research grant for this exact procedure. I could get Sophie on the list, with a condition. Kate's spine stiffened. What condition? Reeves's eyes met hers, conveying a message beyond his words. The selection committee requires a personal interview with the family. The next one is tomorrow night at Kessler's charity gala. Understanding dawned. Richard Kessler wanted a meeting and he was using Sophie's treatment as leverage. Mom, Sophie's voice broke through Kate's thoughts. Can we do the interview? Kate smiled reassuringly, smoothing back her daughter's hair. Let me talk to Dr. Reeves about the details. Why don't you check out those cool brain models on the shelf? I think there's one that glows in the dark. Once Sophie was occupied across the room, Kate turned back to Reeves. Kessler's using my daughter now. He's using everyone, Reeves replied grimly. The foundation is legitimate and the funding is real. But yes, the timing of Sophie's potential inclusion is almost certainly tactical. Kate's jaw tightened. Jack told me everything. About David's investigation, about Fallujah, about Kessler's operation. Not everything, Reeves corrected softly. Jack told you what he knows. But David compartmentalized, standard procedure for sensitive intelligence work. What are you saying? Reeves glanced at Sophie, ensuring she was still distracted. I'm saying David might have left pieces of the puzzle in different places, with different people. The question is whether finding those pieces is worth stirring up a hornet's nest that's already angry. Kate thought of the desert wolves of Sledge Thompson's promise that it wasn't over. They're coming after us anyway. Sledge recognized me. He knew who I was before I said anything. All the more reason to consider laying low. Take Sophie and disappear for a while. The suggestion hit Kate like a physical blow. When after 7 years of rebuilding our lives here, she shook her head firmly. No, David wouldn't have run, and neither will I. Reeves studied her face, seeing the determination that had carried her through multiple combat deployments and the devastating aftermath of losing her husband. Then at least let me help. My place has good security and plenty of room. We're staying at Jack's, Kate replied. The guest house is already set up for Sophie's wheelchair. Reeves nodded, unsurprised. Jack's place is secure but not invisible. Kessler will know you're there. Let him, Kate said, a dangerous edge entering her voice. I'm tired of being in the dark. If Kessler knows something about David's death, I want to hear it from him directly. Be careful what you wish for, Reeves warned. The truth about David's death might be more complicated than you're prepared for. Kate's response was interrupted by Sophie's return. Mom, can I get a brain model like this for my room? It's so cool, Kate forced a smile. We'll see, sweetheart. Right now, we need to head back to grab some more clothes from the apartment before dinner at Mr. Harrison's. They said their goodbyes to Reeves, who promised to call with more details about the Kessler Foundation interview. As they navigated through the hospital corridors, Kate couldn't shake the feeling they were being watched. 7 years of civilian life hadn't dulled the situational awareness drilled into her by naval special warfare training. Mom, that man is staring at us, Sophie whispered as they waited for the elevator. Kate followed her daughter's gaze to a man in hospital scrubs, leaning against the wall, ostensibly checking his phone. His posture was too rigid for someone truly relaxed, his attention clearly focused on them, despite his downturned face. It's okay, Kate assured Sophie while subtly positioning herself between her daughter and the man. He probably just recognizes me from the video. The elevator arrived and Kate maneuvered Sophie's wheelchair inside, pressing the button for the parking garage. As the doors began to close, the man suddenly looked up, making direct eye contact with Kate. The message was clear. I see you. I know where you are. The elevator doors closed, leaving them alone in the small space. He was scary, Sophie said quietly. Kate stroked her daughter's hair, mind racing. Just rude, honey. Some people don't know it's impolite to stare. The parking garage was dimly lit and eerily empty for mid-afternoon. Kate pushed Sophie's wheelchair with one hand, her other ready to access the small canister of pepper spray concealed in her jacket pocket. Jack had offered her a gun, but Kate had declined. Her military training had included firearms proficiency, but she'd never kept weapons around Sophie. Now approaching her weathered Honda Civic alone in the echoing concrete structure, she reconsidered that decision. They reached the car without incident, Kate efficiently helping Sophie from wheelchair to passenger seat with the practiced movements of years of routine. She collapsed the wheelchair and stowed it in the trunk, constantly scanning their surroundings. The drive to their apartment complex took 15 minutes through the modest suburban streets of Red Rock. The town had grown significantly in recent years, fueled by retirees seeking desert warmth and the expansion of several tech companies. Kessler development signs marked numerous construction projects along the route. Their apartment building was a two-story structure with outdoor walkways catering primarily to seniors and residents with disabilities. The ground floor unit Kate and Sophie shared was small but functional, with modifications for Sophie's wheelchair access that had consumed much of Kate's savings when they first moved in. Kate parked in her assigned spot, immediately noticing something was wrong. The curtains in their living room window were drawn shut. Kate always left them open during the day to save on electricity. "Sophie, honey, I forgot something at Mr. Harrison's," Kate said casually, not shifting the car out of park, but keeping her hand on the gear shift. "We need to head back." Sophie frowned. "But my special pillow." "I'll buy you a new one," Kate interrupted more sharply than intended. She softened her tone. "Sorry, sweetheart. It's just, I think I left the stove on. Safety first, right?" Before Sophie could respond, Kate's phone rang. The screen displayed Jack's name. "Kate," Jack's voice was urgent the moment she answered. "Don't go into your apartment. It's been compromised." A chill ran down Kate's spine. "How do you know?" "I installed a secondary security system after you moved in," Jack admitted. "Silent alarm triggered 20 minutes ago. Local police are on their way, but they report to Lawson, who might report to Kessler." Kate finished the thought. "We're in the parking lot, leaving now." "Come straight back," Jack ordered. "And Kate, don't stop for anyone." Kate ended the call, shifting the car into reverse. "Change of plans, kiddo. Sleepover at Mr. Harrison's just got extended." As they pulled out of the parking space, Kate spotted a black SUV entering the complex from the opposite end. Not Kessler's Escalade, but similar dark windows, new model moving with purpose. Kate didn't hesitate. Instead of heading toward the exit, she accelerated toward the front of the complex where a service road provided maintenance access. It would be a tight fit for her Honda, but impossible for the larger SUV. "Mom," Sophie's voice held a tremor of fear. "It's okay," Kate assured her, gripping the wheel tightly as she navigated the narrow service road. "Just taking a shortcut." The Honda scraped against overgrown bushes as Kate guided it through the maintenance access, emerging onto a residential street behind the complex. In her rear-view mirror, she saw the black SUV pause at the entrance to the service road, clearly considering whether to attempt the tight passage. Kate didn't wait to see their decision. She turned onto the street and accelerated, taking a route toward Jack's property that avoided main roads. "Mom, what's happening?" Sophie asked, her voice small but steady. Kate considered how much to share. Sophie was only 10, but she had endured more than many adults. Sheltering her from harsh realities hadn't always proven effective. "Some bad people might be looking for us," Kate explained, keeping her eyes on the road, "because of what happened at the diner." Sophie was quiet for a moment, processing this information. "Is it because of what happened to Daddy too?" The question caught Kate off guard. "What makes you ask that?" Sophie's fingers played with the zipper of her jacket, a nervous habit she'd developed after the accident. "I heard you and Mr. Harrison talking last night about Daddy's accident maybe not being an accident." Kate silently cursed herself for not being more careful. "We don't know anything for sure, honey. Mr. Harrison and I are just trying to understand some things about the past." "I remember something about the accident," Sophie said suddenly, her voice dropping to almost a whisper. Kate glanced at her daughter, heart pounding. "What do you remember?" Sophie had never spoken about the accident before. The trauma and subsequent coma had erased her memories of that night, according to the doctors. "There was another car," Sophie said slowly, as if retrieving the memory from a great distance. "Before the one that hit us. Black with bright lights. Daddy was scared. He told me to get down, but I didn't understand why." Kate's hands tightened on the steering wheel until her knuckles whitened. "When did you remember this?" "After seeing the men at the diner," Sophie admitted. "Their faces were scary in the same way. like, like they wanted to hurt people. The implication sent ice through Kate's veins. If Sophie was remembering correctly, David had recognized a threat before the accident occurred, which meant it wasn't random at all, it was a deliberate attack. "You're very brave to tell me this," Kate said, reaching over to squeeze her daughter's hand. "When we get to Mr. Harrison's, I want you to tell him exactly what you just told me. Can you do that?" Sophie nodded solemnly. "Is Mr. Harrison going to help us find the bad people who hurt Daddy?" The question was loaded with a child's simple conception of justice, yet infinitely complex in its implications. "Mr. Harrison is going to help us understand what happened," Kate answered carefully. "And then we'll decide what to do next." Jack's property came into view as they crested a hill on the outskirts of town. Situated on 5 acres of desert landscape, the main house was a sprawling single-story structure with adobe walls and a red-tiled roof. Behind it sat a smaller guest house connected to the main building by a covered walkway. The entire compound was surrounded by a decorative but functional wall with a secure gate at the entrance. Kate pressed the remote clipped to her visor and the heavy iron gate swung open. As she drove through, she checked the rearview mirror one final time. No sign of pursuit, but that didn't mean they weren't being watched. Jack was waiting on the front porch, his posture alert. As Kate parked, he approached to help with Sophie's wheelchair, his movements efficient despite his age. "Anyone follow you?" he asked quietly as he unfolded the wheelchair. "Black SUV at the apartment complex," Kate replied, keeping her voice low. "Lost them on the service road, but they know we were there." Jack nodded grimly. "They're getting bolder. Broke in without bothering to hide it." Once Sophie was settled in her wheelchair, they made their way inside. The interior of Jack's home reflected his personality, practical, uncluttered with subtle nods to his military service. Photos of SEAL teams in desert camouflage shared wall space with Southwestern art. A display case held his Navy Cross and Silver Star alongside his SEAL Trident and other military insignia. "I've got pasta on the stove," Jack announced, his tone deliberately light for Sophie's benefit. "Dr. Reeves is joining us for dinner. Said he had some news about that treatment we discussed." Sophie perked up at this. "Is he bringing the cool brain model?" Jack smiled, the expression softening his weathered features. "You'll have to ask him. Meanwhile, how about helping me set the table? I never can remember which side the fork goes on." As Sophie eagerly wheeled herself toward the kitchen, Jack turned to Kate, his expression serious once more. "We need to talk. Sophie too, if she's up for it. Reeves found something in her medical records from the accident." Sophie remembered something, Kate said, her voice low and urgent. "About the night of the crash. She says there was another car before the one that hit them. Black with bright lights. David told her to get down." Jack's eyes narrowed. Memory recovery after trauma can be unreliable. "Or it can be triggered by similar stimuli," Kate countered. She said the men at the diner reminded her of it. Same scary faces, her words. Jack absorbed this, clearly connecting dots in his mind. The timing fits. David had just obtained evidence about Kessler's operation. If they knew he had it, they'd eliminate the threat. Kate finished, a cold certainty settling in her stomach. But Sophie was collateral damage they didn't account for. And so was I, except I wasn't in the car that night. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted their conversation. Jack moved to a security panel on the wall, checking the camera feed. "It's Reeves." Moments later, Thomas Reeves entered, carrying a medical bag and what appeared to be a thick file folder. His normally immaculate appearance was slightly disheveled, as though he'd left the hospital in a hurry. "We need to move up our timetable," he announced without preamble. Kessler's men were at the hospital, asking questions about Sophie's records. Kate tensed. How those should be protected by privacy laws. "They should be," Reeves agreed grimly. "But money has a way of opening doors that should stay closed. One of my nurses was approached with an offer of $10,000 for information about Sophie's treatment." "Did she take it?" Jack asked. "No, but she might not be the only one they approached." Reeves set his bag in the folder on a side table. "Where's Sophie now?" "Kitchen," Jack replied, setting the table. Reeves lowered his voice further. "I pulled her complete medical records from the night of the accident. The original scans, blood work, everything. There's something you both need to see." He opened the folder and extracted several medical images, X-rays and CT scans of Sophie's spine and lower body from immediately after the accident. This is the injury that caused her paralysis, Reeves explained, pointing to a clearly visible fracture on one of the images. Compression of the T12 vertebra. Consistent with the type of impact reported in the accident. Kate nodded, having seen similar images during Sophie's initial treatment. And this, Reeves said, pulling out another scan and placing it beside the first. This is a different angle of the same injury taken about an hour later. See this shadow here? He pointed to a small, dense object near the fracture site. The radiologist noted it as probable metal fragment from the vehicle, but I've seen enough combat injuries to recognize what this actually is. Jack leaned in, studying the image intently. A bullet fragment. Reeves nodded solemnly. 9mm, I'd wager. Too small to be from a rifle and the wrong density for standard car parts. The implications crashed over Kate like a physical wave. She was shot. My daughter was shot. The fragment lodged against the vertebra, contributing to the damage, Reeves confirmed. It wasn't included in later reports, and subsequent scans focused on the vertebral damage itself, not foreign objects. Someone sanitized the records, Jack surmised, removed the evidence of a shooting to maintain the car accident narrative. Kate struggled to process this revelation. Not only had David's death been deliberately orchestrated, but Sophie had been shot in the process. Her paralysis wasn't just the result of a collision, it was caused by a bullet meant to ensure there were no witnesses. Why didn't the doctors say anything? She demanded, anger building in her chest. They might not have known, Reeves said. Radiologists flag abnormalities, but trauma surgeons were focused on saving her life, stabilizing the spine. In the chaos of a multi-trauma situation, details get lost. And if someone wanted to make sure those details stayed lost, they'd make sure the right people saw the right images, Jack finished. The sound of Sophie's wheelchair approaching silenced their conversation. She wheeled into the room, her face brightening at the sight of Reeves. Dr. Reeves, did you bring the brain model? Reeves managed a warm smile despite the tension in the room. Not today, Commander, but I did bring some interesting pictures of your spine from when you were first hurt. Would you like to see them? Sophie nodded eagerly, her scientific curiosity piqued. As Reeves carefully explained the images in child-appropriate terms, Kate exchanged a look with Jack, a silent communication passing between them. This changed everything. The stakes were no longer just about uncovering the truth of David's death. They were about justice for Sophie as well. Sophie, honey, Kate said gently, can you tell Dr. Reeves what you remembered about the night of the accident, about the car you saw before the crash? Sophie described her memory again, more confidently this time. Reeves listened intently, occasionally asking clarifying questions with the skilled patience of someone accustomed to interviewing traumatized patients. And you're sure the car was black, he confirmed, with extra bright headlights? Sophie nodded emphatically. Super bright, like when people have those mean lights that hurt your eyes at night. Tactical high beams, Jack murmured. Common modification for security personnel in some law enforcement. A timer dinged from the kitchen, signaling the pasta was ready. Jack excused himself to attend to dinner, leaving Kate, Reeves, and Sophie in momentary silence. Is my memory important? Sophie asked, her perceptiveness once again catching the adults off guard. Kate knelt beside her daughter's wheelchair. Very important, sweetheart. It helps us understand more about what happened that night. Is it going to help catch the bad men who hurt Daddy? Kate hesitated, not wanting to make promises she couldn't keep. It might, but right now the most important thing is keeping you safe. Reeves touched Sophie's shoulder gently. Your mom's right. In the treatment we talked about today, I think we might be able to move it up. Get you into the program sooner. Sophie's eyes widened with hope. Really? So I could walk again faster. That's the goal, Reeves confirmed. But we'll need to do things a bit differently than we discussed at the hospital. During dinner, the conversation remained deliberately light-focused on Sophie's interests in school projects. Only after she had been settled in the guest house's adapted bedroom, with a movie playing on the tablet Jack had provided, did the adults reconvene in the main house's secure study. Jack's study was the heart of his investigation, walls covered with photographs, documents, and maps, all connected by colored strings in the classic pattern of a detective's evidence board. At the center was a photograph of David Miller in his Navy uniform, surrounded by images of Richard Kessler, various Desert Wolves members, and locations around Red Rock. Kessler's getting desperate, Jack said, pouring 3 fingers of bourbon into tumblers and passing them around. Breaking into your apartment, approaching hospital staff. These aren't the actions of a man in complete control. The charity gala tomorrow night, Reeves said, sipping his bourbon thoughtfully. It's the perfect opportunity to confront him on neutral ground with witnesses present. Kate studied the evidence wall, her gaze lingering on a photograph of a military operation. Men in desert camouflage gathered around a map, faces serious. A young Jack Harrison was visible at the edge of the frame alongside a man she recognized as a younger Richard Kessler. What really happened in Fallujah, she asked. The red knight Kessler mentioned at the diner. Jack and Reeves exchanged glances, a silent negotiation passing between them. 2004, Jack finally said. Special operation targeting insurgent leadership in the city. Official mission was intelligence gathering, but there were secondary objectives not in the briefing. Kessler was CIA liaison, Reeves continued. He identified a location where insurgents were allegedly storing funds, gold cash artifacts looted from museums. The operation went sideways. Civilians were killed. 87 of them, Jack added grimly. Women and children mostly, seeking shelter in what turned out to be a community center, not an insurgent stronghold. Kate felt sick. A massacre. A regrettable targeting error according to the official report. Jack's voice was bitter. My team was first on site after the airstrike. We were supposed to secure the area, recover any intelligence materials. But there was no intelligence to gather, Kate surmised. Jack nodded slowly. Instead, we found Kessler and his personal security detail loading crates into unmarked vehicles. Not insurgent funds, museum pieces, gold antiquities. Millions of dollars worth. He'd orchestrated the strike to cover his theft using false intelligence. You reported him, Kate said, understanding dawning. I tried, Jack corrected. The evidence disappeared. Witnesses changed their stories. Eventually, I was quietly encouraged to retire. Kessler continued climbing the ladder at the agency for another decade before transitioning to the private sector. And David, how does he connect to this? Reeves took over the explanation. 3 years ago, David was working on an intelligence assessment of drug trafficking routes through Arizona. He discovered financial irregularities connecting a cartel operation to Kessler development. Properties being purchased with laundered money development projects serving as fronts. David recognized Kessler's name from my old reports, Jack added. He reached out to me for background. That's how we reconnected after all those years. When David realized the scope of what he'd uncovered, Reeves continued, he began gathering evidence, carefully compartmentalizing it to protect sources. According to what he told Jack, he had proof linking Kessler to both the Fallujah incident and current criminal enterprises. On the night of the accident, Kate said slowly, he was bringing that evidence home. Jack nodded gravely. We think so, but we've never found it. Whatever David had, it was significant enough that Kessler was willing to eliminate him to prevent it from surfacing. Kate's mind raced, connecting fragments of memory. In the weeks before his death, David had been unusually cautious, checking the cars before drives, taking varied routes home, speaking in coded references on the phone. She'd attributed it to the secretive nature of his work, never imagining the danger was so immediate. They shot at my daughter, Kate said, her voice hardening. They paralyzed her to cover up their crimes. And they'll do worse if they think she or you can identify them, Reeves warned. The memories she's recovering make her an active threat in their eyes. Jack refilled their glasses. Which brings us to the immediate problem. Kessler knows you're staying here. He knows Sophie is remembering details from the accident, and he controls access to the experimental treatment that might help her walk again. So what's our next move? Kate asked the military strategist in her emerging through the anger and fear. We attend the charity gala, Reeves proposed. Present ourselves as interested solely in Sophie's treatment. Meanwhile, we continue searching for David's evidence. It has to be somewhere. Kate shook her head. I've been through everything David left behind multiple times. There's nothing. Maybe not nothing, Jack said unthoughtfully. Maybe just nothing obvious. An idea struck Kate. Sophie's toys. David was always giving her puzzles, things with hidden compartments. He made it a game. Worth checking, Reeves agreed. But even if we find the evidence, we need to be careful how we use it. Kessler has powerful allies in law enforcement and politics. Going through official channels might not work. Then we don't use official channels, Kate stated firmly. We find the evidence, make copies, and release it widely enough that it can't be buried again. Jack studied her with newfound respect. That's essentially declaring war on Kessler and the Desert Wolves and whoever else is on his payroll. Kate thought of Sophie's paralyzed legs, of the bullet fragment that had caused her condition, of David's life cut short. She thought of Sledge Thompson's promise that it wasn't over and Kessler's thinly veiled threats. They declared war first, she said simply. They just didn't expect anyone to fight back. The conversation was interrupted by Kate's phone ringing. The screen displayed an unknown number. She answered cautiously, putting it on speaker. Kate Miller, a woman's voice unfamiliar and urgent. Who's asking? My name is Sarah Jenkins. I'm an investigative reporter with the Washington Post. The woman spoke quickly, as though worried about being cut off. I've been researching Richard Kessler for the past 6 months. Your husband David was one of my sources before his death. Kate exchanged shocked glances with Jack and Reeves. How did you get this number? David gave it to me as an emergency contact, Jenkins replied. I need to meet with you immediately. I have information about the accident and about what David found, but I can't talk over the phone. Why come forward now? Jack interjected. Because Kessler just accelerated his timetable, Jenkins answered. A major shipment is coming in tomorrow night during the charity gala. Whatever David discovered, it's about to either disappear or expand dramatically. And she hesitated. I recognized you from the diner video. I've been trying to find you for 3 years, ever since David died. Kate made a split-second decision. Desert Vista Coffee Shop, 1 hour, come alone. She ended the call, looking to Jack and Reeves. It could be a trap. Almost certainly is, Jack agreed. But if there's a chance this Jenkins woman actually knows something, we check it out, Kate finished, but carefully, very carefully. The trap, when it came, wasn't what any of them expected. Twilight painted the Arizona desert in hues of amber and purple as Kate checked her equipment one final time. The elegant black evening gown she wore concealed a shoulder holster containing Sledge's pistol, now cleaned and loaded. A small transmitter was hidden in her earring, connecting her to Jack and his team. Comms check, Jack's voice came through clearly. 5 by 5, Kate replied softly, adjusting the diamond bracelet on her wrist. Another piece of equipment, this one containing a miniature camera. The Kessler Foundation Charity Gala was being held at the Desert Palms Resort, a sprawling luxury complex on the outskirts of Red Rock. The main ballroom glittered with crystal chandeliers and expensive floral arrangements, while outside the resort's extensive grounds provided ample space for privacy and security concerns. Dr. Reeves is already inside, Jack said from the surveillance van parked half a mile from the resort. Jensen and Harley are in position at the loading dock. That's where Sledge indicated the shipment would arrive. Kate took a steadying breath. Any sign of Kessler's security team? Plenty, at least a dozen men with tactical training trying to look like standard event security. They're good, but not good enough to hide from the people who know what to look for. The plan was straightforward but dangerous. Reeves would introduce Kate as a potential donor interested in the Foundation's spinal treatment program. This would get her close to Kessler while Jack's team intercepted the shipment, gathering evidence that could be combined with David's documentation. Meanwhile, Sarah Jenkins waited at a secure location, ready to implement the evidence release protocol the moment she received authentication. Kate had successfully retrieved the hidden USB drive from David's metal display earlier that afternoon. The apartment had indeed been ransacked, but the custom frame had been left intact, likely deemed worthless by Kessler's men. The tiny storage device contained encryption keys and authentication protocols that would validate David's evidence to federal authorities. Showtime, Kate murmured, stepping from the taxi and approaching the resort entrance. The security screening was thorough but focused on obvious threats. Kate's carefully concealed equipment passed undetected, and her name was on the guest list, courtesy of Reeves' medical credentials. Inside, the ballroom buzzed with Red Rock's elite. Politicians, business leaders, and wealthy donors mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, all ostensibly gathered to support the Kessler Foundation's medical research initiatives. Kate spotted Reeves immediately, looking distinguished in a tailored tuxedo as he conversed with a small group near the bar. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod before excusing himself from his companions. Mrs. Miller, he greeted her, formally taking her hand. So pleased you could join us tonight. I wouldn't miss it, Doctor, Kate replied, maintaining the charade. Your work with spinal injuries is fascinating. Reeves guided her through the crowd, subtly indicating key figures with slight gestures. Sheriff Lawson by the ice sculpture, three of Kessler's security team at the exits. The man with the silver tie is Senator Harmon, rumored to be Kessler's political mentor. Kate absorbed the information while scanning for their primary target. Kessler. Not yet arrived, he likes to make an entrance. They accepted champagne flutes from a passing server, using the pause to assess the room more thoroughly. Loading dock activity increasing? Jack's voice came through Kate's earpiece. 4 SUVs just pulled in. Looks like our shipment. Kate maintained her pleasant expression while whispering behind her glass. Timeline, 20 minutes maximum. Jensen is in position to intercept. The ballroom lights dimmed slightly and a spotlight illuminated the stage area. A sleek woman in her 40s approached the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, the Kessler Foundation welcomes you to our annual charity gala. Please join me in welcoming our founder and chairman, Mr. Richard Kessler. Applause filled the room as Kessler took the stage, resplendent in a custom tuxedo with a blood-red pocket square. His smile was practiced, his gestures precise as he thanked the attendees for their support. Tonight is about changing lives, Kessler announced, his voice carrying effortlessly. Through your generosity, our medical research initiatives will bring hope to those who need it most. Kate studied him with cold calculation. This man had ordered David's death, had caused Sophie's paralysis, had built an empire on suffering and corruption. Yet here he stood, presenting himself as a savior, a philanthropist dedicated to healing. The irony was almost unbearable. Kessler's speech continued, filled with platitudes about community and progress. Kate noticed how the crowd responded to him, the appreciative nods, the admiring glances. They were completely taken in by the performance. He's good, she murmured to Reeves. The best, Reeves agreed quietly. That's what makes him dangerous. Half the people in this room would swear on their lives that Kessler is a saint. As Kessler concluded his speech to enthusiastic applause, Jack's voice came through Kate's earpiece again, his tone urgent. Shipment confirmed. Drugs, cash, and documentation of what appears to be human trafficking. We've got it all on camera, but there's a complication. Sledge and the Desert Wolves just arrived. Kate felt her muscles tense. How many? At least 8, armed. They're not expected based on the reaction of Kessler's security team. Something's wrong. Before Kate could respond, she noticed a commotion at the entrance to the ballroom. Sledge Thompson stood in the doorway, his imposing figure incongruous in a poorly fitted suit. His hand was still bandaged from their encounter in the church parking lot, but his expression was triumphant as he scanned the room. He knows we're here, Kate whispered. Reeves casually guided Kate toward a service exit. We need to move. Now. Wait, Kate said, her gaze fixed on Kessler, who was now speaking with Sheriff Lawson near the stage. The sheriff's expression was grave as he listened to whatever Kessler was saying. Lawson's warning him. Kate, Jack's voice was sharp in her ear. Harley's been spotted. Security's mobilizing. We need to execute now or abort. The decision crystallized in Kate's mind. Execute. I'm proceeding with Kessler. She broke away from Reeves, moving purposefully through the crowd toward Kessler. Sledge spotted her halfway across the room, his eyes widening with recognition and fury. Miller, he shouted, reaching inside his jacket. The ballroom erupted into chaos. Guests screamed and scattered as Sledge drew a pistol, but before he could aim, a security guard tackled him from behind. The weapon discharged into the ceiling, sending plaster raining down and escalating the panic. Kate used the confusion to close the distance to Kessler, who was being hustled toward a private exit by 2 security personnel. Sheriff Lawson drew his service weapon, but instead of aiming at Kate, he turned it on one of Kessler's guards. Federal agent, Lawson announced, displaying a badge that was definitely not from the local sheriff's department. Mr. Kessler, you're wanted for questioning. Kessler's face contorted with rage and disbelief. You all this time? Undercover for 3 years, Lawson confirmed grimly, ever since David Miller's evidence landed on the FBI director's desk. Kate felt as though the floor had dropped from beneath her feet. You knew about David. Lawson's eyes met hers briefly. He contacted us a week before his death. We didn't move fast enough to protect him. I've been working to finish what he started ever since. Kessler lunged suddenly, shoving one of his guards into Lawson and breaking free. He sprinted for the service corridor, moving with unexpected speed for a man his age. "He's running!" Kate shouted into her comm, already in pursuit. The narrow corridor led to the resort's kitchen, where startled staff flattened themselves against walls as Kessler and then Kate barreled through. Kessler knocked over a cart of dishes to slow her, but Kate vaulted it without breaking stride, her combat training taking over. "Heading for the east exit," she reported, following Kessler through a delivery area and into the resort's landscape grounds. "Intercepting," Jack responded. Outside, the desert night enveloped them. Kessler sprinted across manicured lawns toward a helipad where a sleek black helicopter waited, rotors already spinning. His escape plan, Kate realized aloud, pushing herself harder. She was gaining on him when a figure stepped from the shadows directly into Kessler's path. Jack Harrison stood with legs braced and arms crossed, blocking the way to the helicopter. Kessler skidded to a halt, eyes darting wildly between Jack before him and Kate behind. "It's over, Kessler," Jack said, his voice carrying over the helicopter's whine. "The shipment's been seized. The evidence is being transmitted to federal authorities as we speak." "You have no idea who you're dealing with," Kessler snarled, pulling a small pistol from inside his jacket. "I've survived worse than you two." Kate slowed her approach, hands raised slightly. "David survived too, until you had him killed, had my daughter shot." "Collateral damage," Kessler dismissed with a wave of his weapon. "David should have played the game. Taken the promotion I offered, looked the other way. He chose this." "He chose justice," Kate corrected, edging closer. "Just like Jack did in Fallujah. Just like I'm doing now." Kessler's laugh was hollow. "Justice? There's no justice, only power, and those too weak to seize it. I built an empire from nothing, became untouchable." "Not anymore," Jack said, nodding slightly towards something behind Kessler. The momentary distraction was all Kate needed. She launched forward in a perfectly executed takedown, knocking the pistol from Kessler's hand and driving him to the ground. The impact knocked the wind from him, and Kate quickly secured his arms behind his back. "Richard Kessler," came Lawson's voice as he approached with drawn weapon. "You're under arrest for murder conspiracy, drug trafficking, human trafficking, and treason against the United States." Other agents emerged from the darkness, moving to secure the helicopter pilot in the remaining areas of the resort. Lawson handed Kate a set of handcuffs, which she secured around Kessler's wrists with grim satisfaction. As federal agents took custody of Kessler, Kate finally allowed herself to breathe. 7 years of questions, of grief, of rebuilding a life from shattered pieces, all culminating in this moment. "David would be proud," Jack said quietly, coming to stand beside her arm. Kate nodded, words temporarily beyond her. In the distance, she could see Sledge and other desert wolves being loaded into FBI vehicles. Reeves approached from the direction of the ballroom, his expression both relieved and concerned. "Sophie?" Kate asked immediately. "Safe," Reeves confirmed. "I just checked in with Ortiz. She's asleep, completely unaware of any of this." Kate looked at the 3 men standing with her, Jack, Reeves, and Lawson, each connected to David in different ways, each part of the justice that had finally been served. "I need to be with my daughter," she said simply. "Go." Jack nodded. "Lawson and I will handle the debriefing. There'll be plenty of statements to give tomorrow." Kate hesitated. "The treatment for Sophie?" "Already arranged," Reeves assured her. "Johns Hopkins is expecting you both next week. The FBI has agreed to provide transportation." "Witness protection program," Lawson added, "at least until the trials are complete. Kessler still has allies who might seek retribution." Kate accepted this with a nod. Whatever came next, she would face it, knowing the truth had finally emerged from the shadows. 1 year later, the bell above the door of the Gridiron Grill chimed as Kate entered, carrying a tray of fresh-baked cookies. The renovation had been completed 2 months earlier, the interior now brighter but still maintaining the military memorabilia that gave the place its character. Jack looked up from where he was showing a young veteran how to operate the new espresso machine. His face, more relaxed than Kate had ever seen it, broke into a smile. "Just in time," he called. "The lunch crowd's about to descend." The diner had become even more popular since reopening. The story of Kessler's downfall had made national news, with the Gridiron Grill featuring prominently as the place where it had all begun. Tourists now mingled with locals, eager to sit in the booth where Kate had famously defended herself with a chair. Kate set the cookies on the counter, and glanced toward the corner booth, the one permanently reserved for veterans. Today it held a special occupant. Sophie sat with her back straight, intently focused on the tablet before her. At the sound of her mother's arrival, she looked up and waved excitedly. "Mom, Dr. Reeves says I'm ready for the parallel bars." Kate moved to her daughter's side, still marveling at the changes of the past year. The experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins had been grueling, multiple surgeries to remove the bullet fragment and repair the damage to Sophie's spine, followed by months of intensive rehabilitation. Progress had been slow but steady, with Sophie graduating from complete wheelchair dependence to short periods of supported standing. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," Kate said, bending to kiss the top of Sophie's head. "When does he want to start?" "Tomorrow," Sophie beamed. "He says I might be walking with crutches by Christmas." The bell chimed again and Thomas Reeves entered carrying a small gift bag. His position at Red Rock Memorial had been filled by a colleague from Johns Hopkins, allowing him to relocate to the private practice he'd established in town. His primary patient, of course, was Sophie, though he now treated many veterans as well. "Did I hear someone talking about parallel bars?" he asked, setting the bag before Sophie. "A little motivation for tomorrow's session." Sophie eagerly opened the gift, gasping with delight as she pulled out a pair of bright purple athletic shoes. "My favorite color, and they match my braces." "Custom orthopedics," Reeves explained to Kate, "designed specifically for her rehabilitation needs. And yes, I made sure they were purple." Their relationship had deepened over the past year, moving from mutual respect to genuine affection. Kate had been cautious at first, uncertain whether she was ready to open her heart again after David. But Reeves had been patient, understanding that healing took many forms and followed no set timeline. The lunch crowd began filtering in locals, tourists, and a growing number of veterans who found in the Gridiron Grill a place of understanding and community. Jack had expanded the veterans program, offering free meals twice weekly and employment opportunities for those transitioning to civilian life. As Kate moved behind the counter to help with the rush, she caught sight of the framed newspaper article near the entrance. The headline read, "Justice served Kessler convicted on all counts." The trials had been exhaustive, with Kessler's legal team fighting every charge. In the end, David's meticulously gathered evidence, combined with testimony from Jack, Kate, and dozens of others, had proven insurmountable. Kessler was serving multiple life sentences without possibility of parole. The Desert Wolves had been disbanded, their criminal enterprise dismantled. Sledge Thompson had turned state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence, providing details that helped convict several of Kessler's political allies. "Penny for your thoughts," Jack said, joining Kate at the counter. "Just reflecting," she replied. "A year ago, I was a waitress with a chair. Now look at us." Jack's weathered face creased in a smile. "A waitress with exceptional aim and training. Don't sell yourself short." The familiar routine of the lunch service helped ground Kate in the present. Taking orders, serving food, ensuring every customer felt welcomed, simple actions that now carried deeper meaning. This wasn't just a job anymore. It was part of a legacy. Near closing time, Sarah Jenkins arrived with a fresh stack of books. Her exposé on the Kessler case had become a bestseller, with a portion of the proceeds dedicated to the David Miller Foundation for Investigative Journalism. "Hot off the press," she announced, setting down the paperback edition, complete with a new afterword about the appeals process. "Any chance they'll overturn the conviction?" Kate asked, though she already knew the answer. Jenkins shook her head. "None. The evidence was airtight and 3 judges have already refused to hear appeals. He'll die in prison." As the last customers departed, Kate, Jack, Reeves, and Sophie gathered around the veterans booth with Jenkins. It had become something of a tradition, this moment of quiet reflection at day's end. "I have news," Reeves said, taking Kate's hand. "I've been offered the directorship of the new Spinal Rehabilitation Center at Arizona General. They want to incorporate the techniques we pioneered with Sophie's treatment." "That's wonderful," Kate said sincerely. "When would you start?" "January," he replied. "But there's more. The position includes housing on the medical campus. 3-bedroom condo, fully accessible." The implications hung in the air. Though Reeves had become a fixture in their lives, he maintained his own apartment in town. This would be a significant change. "Are you asking us to move in with you, Dr. Reeves?" Sophie asked bluntly, her expression unreadable. Reeves cleared his throat, suddenly looking more nervous than Kate had ever seen him. "Well, I was hoping to discuss it with your mother first, but yes, if that's something you both might want." Sophie considered this seriously before nodding. I think that would be acceptable, but only if you marry Mom first. That's how it works in movies. The adults burst into surprised laughter, breaking the tension. Kate felt her cheeks flush as Reeves squeezed her hand. Your daughter makes a compelling point, he said softly. What do you think? Before Kate could respond, Jack raised his coffee cup. To new beginnings, he proposed, and to David, who made them possible. The toast was solemn but not sad. David's presence remained with them in Sophie's determined spirit, in the justice they'd achieved together in the community they'd built from adversity. Later that evening, as Kate helped Sophie with her exercises, her daughter asked the question that had been lingering unspoken. Do you think Daddy would be okay with Dr. Reeves? Kate considered this carefully. Your father wanted us to be happy and safe. I think he'd approve of someone who's helped us achieve both. Sophie nodded, satisfied with this answer. I still miss him sometimes. Me too, sweetheart. We always will. But missing him doesn't mean we can't move forward. As Sophie drifted off to sleep that night, Kate stood at the window of their apartment, gazing at the desert stars. The path forward wasn't entirely clear, but for the first time in 7 years, the weight of unanswered questions no longer pressed upon her shoulders. Justice had been served. Not quickly, not easily, but thoroughly and completely. Kessler would spend his remaining years contemplating his crimes from behind prison walls. Sophie was healing both physically and emotionally, and Kate herself had found a strength she hadn't known she possessed, a capacity not just to survive, but to rebuild and flourish. Her phone chimed with a text from Reeves. Thinking about what Sophie said, not the most conventional proposal, but she's right about the proper order of things. Dinner tomorrow to discuss. Kate smiled, typing her reply, yes to dinner, and yes to the question she forced you to almost ask. She set the phone aside and moved to check on Sophie one last time. Her daughter slept peacefully, one hand curled around the medallion that had belonged to David, the Navy Cross that had been returned to them after the trial. Kate gently tucked the blanket around Sophie's shoulders, then whispered the words that had become their nightly ritual. Brave people do what's right even when they're scared. In the quiet of the desert night, with the promise of tomorrow stretching before them, Kate finally felt the truth of those words in every fiber of her being. They had been brave. They had done what was right. And though the road ahead would hold new challenges, they would face them together. A family forged not by blood alone, but by courage, sacrifice, and love that had withstood the ultimate test. Some dishes, after all, were best served cold. But what followed could be warm, nourishing, and exactly what was needed to heal.